Welcome everybody to the first Secabo Digital Summit in the year 2020. We want to now have a look at our digital finishing range of products. We want to have a look at all the different types of machines and explain what we can use them for, have a look at the technical data, and we'll start with the FC50 and the FC100 flatbed cutters. Then have a look at the roll-to-roll cutter, and afterwards have a look at the SC30 sheet cutter. First we're going to have a look at our flatbed cutters. We have the FC50 and the FC100 here. And first we're going to answer the question, what is a flatbed cutter? Well, principally it's not much different to a roll cutter plotter. But of course there is a big difference just if you have a look at them. The feeding of the material, the vinyl or the paper, in the roll-to-roll plotter is done by feeding the material. In the flatbed cutter, the material lies flat on the table and the cutting head moves on the carriage that we see here. So we can put completely different materials on that. We can put materials in the flatbed cutter that is not suitable to be cut by our vinyl cutter. For example, paper, because paper does not have a liner, so it's a one-layer material. With a flatbed cutter, we can cut through the material.
Cutting through any media in a roll cutter is fairly difficult. In this flatbed cutter, I can cut through easily. Here we have a paper that we can cut through easily. The flatbed cutter is equipped with a vacuum table. Down here you can see the vacuum pump. The air is sucked from the table. There are a number of small holes there, and the air goes through this felt, and the paper or whatever media is sticking to that table. That way we can cut through a media. The cutting head is equipped with 2 tool holders. It can take, in the standard edition, 1 blade holder. The blade holder is equipped with a drag knife. The drag knife is similar to the usual drag knives we know from the vinyl cutters, but it's bigger so it can cut through thicker material. And the second is a creasing tool. The creasing tool has 2 different sides, one big and one small, so the paper can be creased and cut. Looking at the 2 cutters, the FC50 and the FC100, we can see 2 different types of mats. First we have a felt mat, and the green one is a hard cutting mat with holes inside. With the felt mat, the air is just sucked through the felt material. That way the friction between the material and the paper or whatever media is very high. We can cut all sorts of different materials. We have already tested a huge range of different materials on our flatbed cutters. Not coming only from the printing or sign making industry. We have tested stencils for the electronic industry. We have tested copper material for making sealing rings. We have tested rubber mats for different kind of ceilings. Whenever you have a doubt if the material can be cut with the machines, just send in samples. We are happy to test new materials. But of course, paper is a big part of what's cut with that machines. Of course, these machines are aiming at users making small batches or prototypes with the machine. Depending the application, this can also be used for serial production. We reach a certain level of productivity with the machines. And what we see here in the machine is one of the main things these machines are used for. That's why they are called digital finishing material. This is a thick paper printed with crop marks and barcodes, and this can now be cut and creased in the machine. That way we can make greeting cards or gift boxes or any sort of material used for packaging. Here we can have a detailed look at the holes inside the vacuum table, here with the felt mat. And here is a detailed look at the cutting head with the tool holders. Here is the blade holder. And here is the creasing tool. The creasing tool with the ball tools, big one and a small tool. And you can see here with the hard cutting mat, that green mat, also equipped with holes below the mat where the air goes through the holes. Now we're going to have a look at our label cutter, the LC30 roll-to-roll cutter. Roll-to-roll means that what you can see obviously, there is the media, the raw material, coming on a roll instead of flat material for the flatbed cutter and the sheet cutter. In the middle we can see a cutting plotter module, and on the end side we have one waste material take up and one roll that's taking up the finished labels. That's the most important components of this machine. This machine can produce medium to large quantities of labels. We always give a quantity for wine labels, which is a standard type of label, and we always say it can produce up to 1,000 labels per hours. Of course, that's much less than can be done on the classic huge flexo machines, but of course it's a considerable number. And for all those productions that currently are used a lot in the organic market or cosmetics, all those local productions of organic or any other products can be used for. The machine can not only cut printed material, it can also cut blank, white, black or brown paper. So there is a huge variety of materials right now on the market. Paper made of bamboo, paper made of hop, paper made of grass. We have already tested any sort of different material. Inside of the machine there is the classic cutting plotter engine, and this engine is versatile in cutting different thicknesses or roughnesses of material. It can also cut
really rough, like bamboo paper. If you are careful setting the blade right, any kind of paper or vinyl can be cut with that machine. So you can see this machine is versatile in its use. You can cut printed or unprinted material, blank, white material, all sorts of different materials. And for all of you coming from the classic die cutting label industry, with this machine you can cut different shapes of labels without producing any tool. There is no die that has to be produced, just the shape is coming from the software, any shape. And now we're gonna have a look at the last machine from our digital finishing range. It's the SC30 sheet cutter. Sheet cutter because the media is always coming from a sheet. This case there are printed sheets with labels on it. They are taken in the machine, and you can see it's a typical cutting plotter engine inside. We can use sheets with a format of 330 and 488 millimeter can be used. A4 and A3 sheets. And of course it's a cutting plotter, meaning digital finishing. Any shape of label can be cut with that. There is no limit to the cutting shape. It's digital. Once we have the vector graphic, it can be cut with that machine. We can on one sheet put many different shapes, and also any sheet can be individual. Sheets can be loaded and every sheet can be different because the sheets are identified by a barcode that's printed on the paper. Of course we can put 50 times the same paper inside the machine, but we can also use 50 times a different paper. Important detail that you have to notice, and that's a different point compared to the flatbed cutter. Here the media is moved, so here we need media with a liner because we can't cut through the material. We can cut one layer, and that layer needs to have a liner below. But the material can vary in its thickness or roughness. We have a huge portfolio of material that can be cut. A typical customer could come from a local food producer that's producing some sort of alcohol, jam, jelly, maybe even some cosmetics. And all of these materials need individual labeling, good looking labeling, and that can be produced in a small to medium quantity, very individual with this machine. It can also print a date on the label that's needed for food production. In the front we have a drawer. In that drawer the finished media will go to. On the crossbeam we have the cutting head, and one really important advantage of that machine. This machine uses sheets, A3, A3 plus, A4, and that means you don't need an expensive printer
You can just use a standard office laser or inkjet printer that your customers might already have or you already have, and print with that machine on paper or vinyl. Next, we're going to have a look at the cutting width and formats of the cutters. The FC50 can work with media of a maximum of 35 centimeters by 52 centimeter. It's maximum because, of course, you can put smaller media on the machine as well. The FC100 cutting plotter has a maximum sheet width of 78 centimeter by 108 centimeter. The SC30 sheet cutter can work with media of a maximum 330 millimeter by 488 millimeters. And the LC30 roll-to-roll cutter can cut a media width of 400 millimeter. The roll can be up to 400 millimeter. The cutting width can be up to 305 millimeter. Really important, the length of the media, meaning the diameter of the roll, it varies because the thickness of the material varies in a wide range. But in any case, it can be a couple of 100 meters that can fit in that. And at this point, I want to give you an important note. The length of the label that can be cut in this machine varies with the shape of the label. Complex shapes of labels means that they have to be shorter, and simple shapes can be longer. But standard shapes like wine labels are not any problem to cut with that machine. And last, we are going to have a look at the software that's coming with the machines. FC50, FC100 and SC30 comes with DrawCut Pro. DrawCut Pro is not only a cutting software, it can also do a variety of layouting jobs. Of course, don't really compare it with Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW. Much simpler. But if you just need to make a text here or arrange the shapes, do a little bit of nesting or vectorizing, that can all be done with the DrawCut Pro software. The vectorization tool is really good. The engine inside the DrawCut Pro software is really good. If you just get a bitmap graphic and are asked to produce a label from that bitmap, this vectorization can be done with the software. The cutting path can be created inside the software. When you look at the digital finishing range, you always need a print file and a cut file, because you need some part that needs to be printed and another part that is the cutting data. And with FC50 and FC100, you have to define two different tools. Inside the cutting path, there needs to be addressed what is cut and what is creased. And both of this data can easily be defined in the DrawCut Pro. And there is a barcode on the printed material. And this barcode uniquely identifies this material. With having separated the cutting file and the printing file, when taking the printed media to the machine, we have to identify which is the right cutting path. If you have a number of different jobs running in your workshop, it's important to always find the right cutting file that fits to the printed material. And not only finding the right cutting path for the printed material, you have always at least two possibilities how you can insert the material into the flatbed cutter. At least you can have two ways of putting it in. And the barcode that's printed on the material does not only identify the right cutting path, it also has information about the orientation. So there is a barcode on each side of the print, on top and on bottom. And the first one that's read by the sensor identifies the orientation. In the software you can have a lot of settings for the margins, the cutting speed, the cutting force. You can define if you just make one barcode for one printed item, or you use a barcode for one complete sheet. And last, we're going to have a look at the software of the roll-to-roll cutter. The software with the LC30 is different from the other software. This software clearly has the focus to control the machine. It's not a layouting software, it's a software made to control the machine. We have a crop marking system that's different from the DrawCut Pro system. It's inline cutting marks. So every row of label on this roll has one set of crop marks. That guarantees that even if you have thousands of labels and a roll that's hundreds of meters long, the position is always exact. But reading a barcode in every row would take too much time. So that's why we have here simple inline crop marks. The software can import different types of files, but the imported data always has to have the two sets of information inside. First, the printing information and the cutting information. There is different ways how to define the cutting path. Can be by a spot color, can be by a standard color from the graphic, or a cutting path that's one layer inside of the file format. The software produces a printing file that includes the crop marks and one file for cutting. And there is a code on the printed file, so the printed material can be identified. Now we're going to have a look at the scope of the delivery for these machines. As always with Secabo machines, the machines can be used out of the box. That's important for us. You don't have to buy any additional thing or device that comes on top. If you buy the machine, you can use it. Of course, very important, the software. We already had a look at that. The software is included in the price. For the FC50, the tools are included. There is the vacuum pump included, the blade holder, and also the creasing tool. And we deliver with two different types of mats. The mats can be used for a very long time if you take care of them. But of course, if you cut through with hard downforce, they can be worn and have to be replaced. There are tools with different cutting angles, like you already know that from a standard vinyl cutter. There are for different types of media, different tools, and it's not that easy to predefine which is the right tool for the right media. There always needs to be a little testing be done before you choose the right tool for the right media. If you have many different types of media, you will need to spend some time with that different material and always find the right tool and right settings for each material. One thing you have to remember, different blades for different media, and these blades are different from the blades for the standard cutting plotter. With the FC100, similar, the software is included, the same scope of delivery, the same cutting mats in a different size, of course. The vacuum pump comes with the machine, but the FC100 has a stand that's coming with that. The SC30, also similar. The machine as it is delivered can be used. There is the blades coming with the scope of delivery, the blade holders, and of course the software, the cables, USB cable, of course all of that is included. One important note, the machines need to be calibrated. We have another webinar just for calibration of the machines. But for the calibration, you always need to have a pen tool with a pen that can write on paper. That way you can calibrate the machines with our DrawCut software. Have a look at that webinar, very interesting how to do the calibration. The LC30, the software we already have talked about, it's included in the scope of delivery. All cables are included, the roll holders are included, the blades, blade holder, and for calibration, the pen holder with the right pen. With that machine, if you set the machine right, the blade should be the only real wearing part. But be careful, on this machine there are huge length of media be cut, and the length the blade has to cut is very, very long. So the blade may wear faster than with other machines. And for having proper cutting results, you have to change the blade once in a while. If the blade is set right, the cutting strip won't wear. But if you cut through the material, then the cutting strip is damaged, and there are parts flipping off that cutting strip, and you will have small holes in the cutting strip. And that way the quality will be significantly lower. So take care of that cutting strip. It's not that expensive, and if you see some holes or cuts inside the cutting strip, rather change it faster than slower to have always good cutting quality. So we have come to the end. This was the overview of the Secabo digital finishing machines. I want to thank you very much for your attention. Questions are welcome right after this webinar live or via our social media channels, email or telephone. We are happy to answer your questions. Thank you and goodbye.
So, welcome back again to our live Q&A. I'm totally happy that so many of you are watching this, and I hope that the video already answered a lot of your questions. But of course, we are live here to answer any new question. So you have now another 15 minutes to send us any questions via Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. Or you can send them via our website, and any question that comes too late will be answered afterwards. And one thing, this video will later be put on our website, so you can always watch this to get all the information. So, are there any questions?
Yeah, actually it's quite a couple of questions we get from Udaya. For FC50 and FC100, what is the maximum media thickness?
Oh wow, that's a really complicated question. The thickness, the maximum thickness is roughly 1.5 millimeter. But, and there's a big but, this does not apply to any kind of material, because the stiffness and the roughness of the material varies in a huge range. And if you just give me the thickness of the material, it's almost impossible to answer the question if the machine can really cut it. We have cut through 1.5 millimeter material, but we have also failed cutting through a material that is only 0.1 millimeter of thickness. So we always recommend to do tests before you decide to go for a specific material, because it's really, really hard to say just if you give us the sort of material like, hey, it's a polyester or it's a PVC, the variety of hardness is so big that it's almost impossible to answer before you do the actual test. So if you doubt that the machine can cut it, send us material and we are going to perform tests absolutely for free, and we will give you the results afterwards.
Okay, the second question is, can both cutting and creasing tool install at the same time?
Yeah, of course. I think you can see it here. There is both the cutting and the creasing tool installed at the same time.
this has to be that way, otherwise you wouldn't be able to perform production of a gift box or a greeting card that is first cut, that is creased and then cut. So you can fold it after creasing and cutting is done. So absolutely yes, they have to be installed at the same time.
Then the next questions are both machines using the same type of cutting head?
There are slight differences of the cutting heads. In fact, there is a little bit more downforce in the cutting head of the FC50 than in the FC100. But this is more inside technical stuff. For the end user who is working with that machine, there won't be a big difference between both of the machines when you actually use them. The smaller one, you can apply a little bit more downforce, and you can cut a little bit thicker and rougher material, but that's really at the edge of what's possible with the machines. That's not in the middle of the specifications where we actually want the machines to be used in a production environment. That's rather at the end of what you should use the machines for.
Then we have a question for the SC30. The image position varies when printing on digital machines, for example, Konica Minolta or Xerox. In this case, does the SC30 scan the crop marks on each sheet?
Yes, there is a scanning be done for each sheet. And of course, before you print on a specific printer, of course you can use different printers. You always have to set the margins and the position of the crop marks. You can, sorry for that, we're working here in the workshop. You can set the distance between the labels and the crop marks. So you have to do all that settings, and then yes, you can mix printing of different printers, and the barcode is read for every print that's put inside of the SC30.
Okay, now we got two questions in German actually.
Okay.
I'm going to read them out in German and in English, and then you can,
go ahead.
Answer both. Wie schräg kann man das bedruckte Material bei den FC einlegen, sodass die Crop Mark weiterhin erkannt werden und korrekt geschnitten werden? In English, how skewed can you enter the printed material into the FC series so the crop marks can still be read and cut correctly?
There is a correction inside of the software that can handle a little bit of skew. It actually depends a little bit on what kind of shape you have. Actually, I don't know the degree by heart, so I can't tell you it's 5 or 10 or 15 degree, but actually the software has a correction for the skew inside. So I'm gonna put that in German as well. Es gibt eine Korrektur für eine Schrägstellung. Es gibt eine Abhängigkeit auch von der Art des Bogens und was auf dem Bogen drauf ist. Aber ich muss jetzt an der Stelle sagen, ich kann jetzt gerade keine Angabe machen, ob das jetzt 5 Grad oder 10 Grad sind. Das müssten wir dann nochmal im Nachhinein beantworten.
Another German-English question. Wenn die Größe des Drucks zum Beispiel etwas zu lang gedruckt ist, wird diese durch die FC-Maschinen, in Klammern Crop Mark, kompensiert, sodass der Schnitt weiterhin korrekt ist? For our English audience, if the print is too big, for example, a little bit too long, will the FC automatically compensate for that?
Yeah, same as the skew compensation. There is a compensation for the size as well. So when reading the crop marks, the machine will read always the crop marks all around the printout and do some correction for the size, same as it's doing the correction for the skew. Kurz nochmal auf Deutsch. Wir haben eine Korrektur auch für die Größe. Das heißt, bei einem Druck variiert natürlich immer die Größe, dann die tatsächliche Größe etwas von dem, was in der Software angegeben ist, von dem theoretischen oder dem Normwert, und das wird über die Software dann korrigiert.
Okay, then we have two comments on Facebook. The one is thumbs up from Denmark.
Oh, thank you.
And the other one from the letters, I would say it's from Israel. What is the price for the SC30?
Well, prices of the S3 and all the other machines, I would recommend to have a look at the websites of our resellers all around Europe. You can find the addresses and, of course, also the web pages and the online stores of all our resellers on the Secabo website. There is a section where you can find dealers for every part of the world.
Okay, then another comment from the guy who posted the German questions. Super genial, vielen Dank für die Antwort. So he says, thank you.
You're welcome, vielen Dank, herzlich willkommen.
Okay, what else have we got? Yeah, we just got another question. What's the difference between the FC50 and the FC100?
Okay, so we already talked about the downforce. There is a little technical difference in there. We have already discussed that. When looking at the machine itself, the technical data is almost the same. When you stand in front of the machine as a user, it's for you, it's the same. Of course, the size is different and the weight is different. And one big difference is the FC50 is a desktop machine, and the FC100 is a machine coming with a stand. Of course, if you look at the productivity that you as a user will have when working with the machine, the bigger machine has, of course, advantages because you can put more shapes on one paper, and that gives you more productivity because the paper doesn't have to be changed that often. So that's an obvious advantage, but from the main specifications, it's all the same. Okay.
All right, then another question. What's the difference between the green mat and the gray mat on the two cutters?
Well, apart from the color, it's really that this green mat, it's a hard cutting mat. It's a plastic material on top, and there is a enforced structure below, and there are holes inside, so the air can go through that. And it's hard to tell which one is the best for what kind of material. Generally, we will first try to cut material that has to be creased with the felt mat, because the felt is a little bit more flexible, so the creasing tool can dive into the material a little bit deeper. That's one thing. But we have also found material that's easier to be creased with the hard mat. So I would always say, before you actually do perform a production, I would always recommend to try both of the mats. You will gain some experience which one is the first to try, but I would really recommend try both before you do the real production. And in the end, you will see which one suits this job the best.
Okay, then another question we just got in. what is the size limit for the LC30 and the SC30?
Well, the SC30, the limit is the size of the paper, obviously, and the size of the paper, less, of course, the crop marks, the printing, and the distance from the print to the crop mark. So when working with the A3 or A3 Plus paper or vinyl, you can use the length of the A3 Plus minus what you will need for the crop marks, the barcode, and the margin to that. Technically, it's a cutting plotter and has no technical limit for the size of the label. The LC30, there you have to be careful because there is a technical limit to the length of the label. Because there are rolls that will take up the material after cutting, there is some difficulty if you go for a really long label. So we always say 120 millimeter is the guaranteed length for the highest precision. If you use a longer label, you always have to look at the shape of the label. If it's a more complicated shape, it's likely that there might be some problems with the precision. And if you reach something like 200 millimeters, it's going to be really difficult to get on the long run a high precision label. So testing will do the job and help you to really find the right length and the right setting. So, any more questions?
Yeah, we just got another question on YouTube. What are the typical wearing parts for the FC50 and FC100s?
FC50, FC100. Typically, you will have to change the cutting blades regularly. Depending on the sort of material you cut, it's going to be faster or not so often. Of course, that depends on the roughness of the material. The cutting mat, if you use it a lot and you cut with high downforce and cut into the material, you will also need to change that, but that's really depending a lot on what kind of material you cut there. If you cut a lot of two-layered material, so you don't cut through the actual substrate, you won't have to change that very often. And also, if you be more careful to not cut really deep through the material, you won't have to change that too often. Okay.
Yeah, I think at the moment we don't have any more questions.
Okay, so if you have any more questions, just send us comments or private messages on Instagram. We're happy to get your answers and we really love to stay in touch with you. So don't hesitate to send any more questions and have a look at our schedule for the rest of the week. We also have a lot of interesting topics where you can watch our videos and send us your questions and answers afterwards. So stay tuned and thanks for watching. Goodbye.